Have you ever thought to yourself, wouldn't it be amazing if I could bundle up my entire development environment, including the libraries, SDKs, and runtimes that I need for my code base, and I could put them in a secure, self-contained environment that could take anywhere? Yeah, of course, I want to be able to run it locally on my machine, but I have many machines, and I want to be able to bring that environment everywhere and get set up in seconds. Or if I'm on the go, even run that same exact environment in the cloud. And if you're like me, you also work on multiple types of projects with different environments and different dependencies. For example, I'm currently working on a Node project, a Python project, and a .NET project. And I don't want to have to install all of these dependencies on my machine just to compile and test out different changes for the different projects. At the same time, I also think to myself, wouldn't it be awesome if either when I'm coding or an agent is executing commands, that everything is happening completely separated off from my machine, creating a safe environment for me to do any type of work and any experimentation? Well, you can do just this with development containers, or dev containers as we like to call them, and they're integrated natively into VS Code. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up your very first dev container, how to run coding agents inside them, and also how to get them set up on the go leveraging GitHub Codespaces. So let's go ahead and check it out. All right, let's get set up with dev containers. The very first thing I want to point out here is I have my VS Code, just like you have, and I have my customizations, like my terminal customizations, and I have my extensions here as well. My machine's really set up for C# and .NET development and a bunch of Azure work that I do. So let's go ahead and set up and try out a dev container. The very first thing we're going to want to do is install the dev containers extension. This is what is going to enable us to automatically create and use containers for fully featured development environments. So this is really cool because I can easily swap between these different environments like I was talking about. Now, for dev containers to work, we'll also need a way to run these containers. So for example, I have Docker Desktop here. And here you can see I don't have any containers, I don't have any images, I don't have any volumes either. So Docker Desktop is just going to be running on my local machine, which is where these dev containers are going to run. So once we have those two things installed, I can go over to the Remote Explorer that is installed as part of that extension. This is what is going to enable me to manage my dev containers, and I can even try out a sample. So for example, you can go ahead and check out C++, Go, .NET, Node development inside of a dev container. Now, I don't know much about Go, but I want to go ahead and test it out here. So I'm going to click on that, and we're going to now see a few things in VS Code. It says that it's opening a remote and that it's connecting to a dev container and cloning the repository. It's not only cloning the repository, it's also downloading the container images and environment that I need to run Go applications. Now, based on your internet speeds, this may take a little bit of time. So let's let VS Code finish downloading anything that it needs to get this environment set up on my machine. All right, here we are. The project is opened up, and we can see that it looks like VS Code because it is VS Code. However, it is connected to a dev container. It says Go at desktop Linux. The container image that it's using is Linux-based and is running on my machine, but it is connected to that dev container. So it is in a private, secure environment. So if we open up the terminal here, let's go ahead and boot up a new terminal. We can see that I have a different look and feel to this environment because it is inside of the dev container. So if I go ahead and say Go version, we can see that this is running Go version 1.22.12 in Linux ARM64. If I go over to the extensions, we're going to see kind of a different view here. We can see locally installed, where I have things like my icon pack and VS Code speech. We can see that the other extensions, the ones for C# and .NET development, are grayed out because they're not installed inside of the dev container. If we actually go to the dev container extensions, we can see that these are the dev container extensions that were installed as part of this environment, such as Go, Copilot Chat, ESLint, and the spell checker. This is pretty cool. So how is this configured? Well, let's go back to the Explorer. And here we can see that there's a .dev container folder and a dev container JSON. This file contains everything that is needed to boot up a container image and install anything that we need, such as extensions or other settings and customizations. So here we can see that this is booting up the dev container Go image, but you can also specify a Docker file, for example, that it could load up and create that environment. There's also some different customizations. So the spell checker, for example. And then it also is doing some port attributes for port 9000. And then additionally, you can specify other things such as post create commands, remote users, and a lot more. And I'll link to documentation for all the different customizations. Well, let's go ahead and check out this code base. So the first thing I'm going to do is come over into my agent. I'm going to say at workspace, and I'm going to explain the project. So now these commands are being executed inside of the dev container, and we can get a full overview of the entire project. Okay, this is looking pretty good. What do I want to do? It's tell me how to get packages. I can run, build. This is great. I don't know anything about Go, but I'm able to have this environment set up. Let's go ahead and debug it, and let's see what we get. So I'm going to go into debug. I'm going to launch the server, and we're going to see it running. Now, this build and compilation is happening inside of the container. And additionally, the server will be running inside of the container. So when this happens, VS Code will identify this and say, hey, your application, hello remote world, is running on port 9000, and it will port forward it automatically to the machine. So if I go over to ports, local 9000, I can open it up, and there it is, localhost 9000. It's running inside of the container, but the port is being forwarded so I can access it on my local machine. Awesome. Okay, cool. That is really neat. Let's try something out here. So for example, if I go into the server Go, let's say we come over here and we say, let's add a new get route to export and display the environment that I am running on. So let's see what it does. So now I'm able to work with the agent on my code base here. And what's great is that all of these commands, everything that is happening inside of this environment. So here we go. Let's go ahead and save that, and let's go ahead and run it again. So here it's going to say localhost 9000 env. So let's run it /env. Perfect. Awesome. This is really cool. So what we can see is that the entire environment here is Linux-based, ARM64, and the version of Go, and even how many CPUs I have. So again, this is really neat, proving to the point that this entire server is running inside of the dev container. Now, at any time, I can go ahead and exit this dev container. I can come and click on the bottom left over here, or bring it up, of course, from the command palette. And this will show me how I can not only add new dev container images, configure, rebuild the container, reopen a folder locally, or go over and close that remote connection. Boom. So this is cool. I'm now back on my local machine. I have all my extensions, and it just took seconds to swap back over. I could go ahead and boot this back up. And literally in seconds, I am back inside of that dev container, ready to do my work. Now, if I head over into Docker Desktop, what we're going to see is that I have a container running, images running, and my volumes as well. So I can decide when I start and stop those two. All right, cool. Well, that's how you just try out dev containers. Now let's go ahead and add a dev container to an existing project. So I'm going to open up my MCP badge creator. This application allows me to create different README badges, which are really cool. Now, this doesn't have a dev container, so I could create that file manually, or I can go to the bottom left. And what I can do is say, add dev container configuration files. This will enable VS Code to automatically configure it for me. And it's going to ask me where do I want to put it, in the user data folder or in this workspace. And I'm going to put it in this workspace. So that means if I commit it to source control, you could pull it down and run it inside a dev container in your machine, or even in a code space. I'm going to add the configuration. And then what it's going to do is it's going to show me a bunch of different templates that are available. And again, you can craft your own, but here we're going to see that automatically a bunch of different templates, such as Docker, Kubernetes, Node.js, JavaScript, MongoDB, Postgres, Ubuntu, and a lot more are here. Now, GitHub Copilot is suggesting the Node.js and TypeScript app, which is what this application is. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on that. Here it's going to ask me for the version of Node.js that I want. I'm going to say 22. And then it's going to ask me for any additional features that I may want. So here, I'm just going to go with the defaults of what are here. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit OK. Now, beyond this, it's going to also ask me for any additional files or directories that I may want. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit go. All right. So this has gone ahead and added a dev container for me. And this file is going to specify everything that I need. So here it's going to have the image, it's going to have the name, and then it's going to show me in comments additional customizations that I may want inside of here. All right, this looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and save it. Now, I could just open it, but I'm going to go ahead and say, what other customizations for the dev container should I have based on this project? So here I'm going to ask GitHub Copilot and the agent to automatically figure out, based on this project, how to configure this dev container for me. And I could write this all by hand, but it's going to take a look at the project and it's going to understand what's in my package JSON. It's going to understand what the project is. It's going to make sure that this dev container is set up perfect for me automatically. And of course, I can review it and make sure that everything is correct. All right, awesome. So let's see what it changed. It's gone ahead and, of course, first still has the same exact image, but we can see that it has forwarded some ports for me. I have the dev server, and it's also created some post create commands, VS Code extensions, everything that I may want inside of here. This is really cool. So this gives you this nice overview of everything that you may want inside of here. So I'm going to go ahead and commit this in to source control, because why not? So I'm going to go ahead and add the dev container so we can open it up and sync those changes. All right, well, let's actually open the dev container and see what we get. So I'm going to go to the bottom left. And now what I can do is say open in container. And here it knows about my dev container configuration. And now what it's going to do is download any necessary extensions into the dev container, get the container image, and run those post commands for us automatically. And we can see in the bottom left that yes, dev containers Node.js, that's over here. So now it's going to run those additional commands that has gone and set up for me. So we can see over here that we have the forwarded ports, we have the post create installation over here, and we should be ready to go. So let's give it a few seconds to actually get all set up on my machine. All right, everything is done. It's configured everything that I need. So let's go ahead and create a new terminal. All right, now all I need to do is do an npm run dev, and I'm going to pass in the command of host. This is going to allow it to run locally and on the network because I'm using Vite here. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And there it is. There is my README badge creator website. Now I'm super zoomed in here where we can zoom out. And for example, I can now check out MCD badges, package badges, and a lot more. So I can simply tap on this and say GitHub Copilot, for example, and now we have GitHub Copilot, and I get nice badges and everything that I want here in seconds. And again, this is all running inside that dev container, but the port is being forwarded to my local machine. That is really, really neat. Okay, now the last thing I want to talk about, because I said it earlier, is that once you set up dev containers, you can bring these containers anywhere, including the cloud with GitHub Codespaces. So I'm going to hop over to the browser, and here is that same exact repo that I was just showing. And I have the dev container file here. Now, when I go over to the code, I can go ahead and clone it locally, or I could go to Codespaces. And Codespaces will enable me to boot up that dev container in the cloud inside of a Codespace. This is going to perform the same exact setup that we did locally on our machine, leveraging that dev container for all the customizations and make it so I have an entirely remote cloud-ready coding environment ready to go. So here we can see that it's doing the same exact thing, building up that code space and installing everything in the cloud in the Codespace for us. This is really cool because nothing's happening on my machine. I'm all inside the browser and I get this VS Code experience directly right here. So let's go ahead and give it a second to pull it down and get it up and running. All right, it looks like my dev container is all set up inside the Codespace. So let's go ahead and run it. I'm going to say npm run dev -- host and get that set up again. So here we go. We can see here that it wants to go ahead and open that remote server. Again, now in this case, having a completely forwarded port into that Codespace automatically. And there we go. There is my badge creator. And we can go ahead and set up repository badges, package badges, and everything as well. And I'm running all of this completely inside of a Codespace, leveraging the power of that single dev container JSON configuration. Whether I want to run it locally on another machine or in the cloud, dev containers create that private, secure development environment and all the dependencies that I want for complete customization. Dev containers are so powerful. Not only do they enable you to create an on-the-go development environment, they can literally boot up on nearly any machine in minutes, but everything is completely self-contained inside of that container, making it a clean separation from your local machine. So have you checked out dev containers yet? Like, what's holding you back? Let us know in the comments below how you're using them, or if you plan to actually check them out right now, and what features you'd like to see us add into VS Code. And as always, happy coding.